This backstory is based on Discord chats and is this lore, I'm pretty sure. Um, this was composed into a Google Doc shared, well, from him with me. Um, so I'm reading from that right now. I will be splitting this up into chapters since it is quite lengthy, but it is good. Um, there's no doubt about that. Um, Credit all goes to Walnut Meat. Great story. At the end of the chapter, I'll be just kind of reviewing the parts that I read. So, without further ado, let's get into chapter one, or I guess you could say part one, but like chapter one of part one. So, part one, the Prince's War. In a basic sense of mind, Alous had a major doing in the Prince's War that night went on against his brother, who was the current king at the time. Basically, back when Knight was the jealous prince he was, back before he died, while fighting in his attempted war to become king. And while he was stirring up the rebellion plans, the power hungry prince, you could have said, struck a deal with the sorcerer over the requested rebellion aid. If Alous could help him take over the castle town and make him king, Alous could become his court wizard and have 1/3 of the castle's wealth as his own, based on what they managed to conquer and collect from their efforts. And with a highly tempting offer in place, the jealous prince and the wicked sorcerer struck a deal to fight alongside each other to try and claim that delicious throne. So, with the help of Alous, as well as several other dangers he hired, Sir Knight, who was at this time a prince, went to war against his brother for the throne for the castle town. In their doings, the efforts were going well. Nobody at the castle town expected such a turnaround rebellion against the castle town, and especially not with the help of plant-like Takeda people that Alous came from. As an old time, the leader of magic. As a result, both the prince and the sorcerer reigned supreme with their forces of rebellion, conquering areas of royal land left and right against the more peaceful, rather unprepared royal guard for a threat to come at them on this scale, especially since it came straight out of the royal family itself. So, in the emergency after what seemed to be a major running losing streak against Sir Knight, still prince at the time, and Alous, the at the time king called for help from a harpy city, known at the time as Blight Peak Perch, and its natural home. This land was known for its powerful race of harpies that protected many cultivated magics and doctrines in their culture, making them very powerful in regards to being able to provide meaningful support to the king's counter-war efforts. Here, they were led at the time by a mystical harpy higher up known as Sadina, who received the call for aid from the castle town to go and counter the prince in his mass-scale campaign. Efforts that were succeeding in this toppling throne, she accepted this request with honor, rounded up her elite team of bird people, and set out to southwest to the head of the castle's land as an aid. And after some span of panic and stress in some weeks, the Harpies arrived to aid the current king against the rebels, toppling his home turf. But at the time they arrived, most of the kingdom seemed unsalvageable, as rebel forces managed to push up to the outside of the castle walls, with the majority of the town lying back from the castle, conquered by them in bloody conquest. And this time the Harpies and the remainder of the king's men gathered for the last stand within the corridors of the fortress, ready for all to go to hell with the massive army that was about to smash through the doors, with the next suns rising. And so the next morning came, and when the king's forces opened their castle doors to meet the prince's forces, a splatter of messy conflict was unleashed between the groups. From there, at this point, everything was out of control. The Takur rebel forces conflicted violently with the Harpies, and the king's men, for the gilded seat of power that the throne promised the prince and his men, should they come out on top in this final battle. And an unfortunate sense for their efforts, the battle spanned several days within the castle walls, eventually bringing the fight to a climax at the castle courts, in which both the prince and the king died while dueling each other with blades. Here, the king died of a heavy thrust in the chest with a sword, while the prince died of a decapitating swing from another weapon. Meanwhile, in the back lines, Alous and Sadina met and fought each other for the first time in the span of their battle. Sadina barely got hurt by Sorcerer's weakness and weaker magic spells due to her practices and resistances in harp study. And with her own devastating spells, she managed to rip off one of Alous' arms clean off with some magic, as well as one of his legs in a ripping explosive blast, leaving him crippled for the remainder of the conflict, unable to cast walls or really cast spells at all. And with this, the death of the prince and the king, and the bloody scales of weeks of conflict, a truce would have to be made, in which the dead king's men and the Harpy army were victorious against the Princess rebels and the Takur armies that helped them. So in their doings, in the epilogue, the Elder King, who had at the time retired, retook the throne to keep the kingdom in check after all the fighting mess that occurred over the last couple years. And when the spoils of war were passed out for her efforts, Zadina gained the title of a Harpy Halo, making her one of the higher ups of her healing race, as a reward for fighting as valiantly as she did for the sake of Castletown. And with that, that is the end of chapter 1 of part 1, which all I have to say about this chapter, is I really liked it. It stayed true to the original story of Sir Knight, more closely, but adding obviously the character of Alous. But I even made a video on lore about this, and it I can see where he got some of that. And when I say that, I mean as in like I see he also knew we both theorized that Zadina couldn't have been on the same side as Sir Knight. Now I'm sure we both did that for different reasons. I theorized that because I know that Sir Knight hates mages. I know he even has a whole suit of armor dedicated to defending against mages at the castle walls. So we do know that he does not like mages. Now I'm assuming he made the story to where Zadina was on the other side of the war against Sir Knight because he also knew that, or just to add to, for the thrill of it, just to show that Zadina and Sir Knight have a complicated relationship. I also like how he stayed true to the fact that both brothers died in this story. Really good. I like the decapitation part. Shows a lot. I guess another honorable mention I could say is that in this story he does do a good job at quoting, not citing, but just quoting evidence from the game. I like that he also shows Zadina as one of the higher mages, because she does have a spray that says Archmage, and what an Archmage is a more powerful mage, and I love how he shows Zadina to be that, because that's exactly what she is. So I'd have to give this first part of the chapter of part 1 a not a 10 out of 10, not even 9.5, 10 out of 10. It's just good. I don't see anything really missing from here. But yeah, so that's the first part, guys. We'll be coming up with the next part real soon. Hope you enjoyed. Until then, keep clashing.